Hello, darlings. Welcome to summer. Almost. This video is going to be kind of like a talking head video, but to make it more interesting, I'm going to include some footage of a painting, doing a little study. So you can watch that, you can listen to me, grab some coffee, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today we are going to be talking about pleinairpril, my experience with painting outside every day during April. This is the third year I've done it, I believe. Can't even remember. And I have a stack of sketchbooks because I used all sorts of different papers and mediums this year. I already posted recaps of each week on previous videos, so go check those out if you haven't seen what I did. And today, my goal is to share my top 5 lessons learned. And we'll just go through them one by one. And if you have any questions at the end, of course, leave them in the comments. In another video separate to this, I'm going to talk about my favorite plein air gear, my favorite setups, what I like and don't like nowadays, what I like for certain situations, what gear I travel with, and all of that. So questions about gear, you can leave those in the comments as well, and I'll do my best to collect them all and use them in the next video. And I have notes so that I'll stay on track today, but get a cup of coffee or something to drink and just settle in. We are going to geek out about plein air and just the whole experience of painting daily. My number one lesson, I don't know if it's the most important lesson, but it is important, is the difference between finding time to paint and making time, scheduling it in. And I have talked about this in the past, but the whole idea or the trap that I get stuck in is thinking, oh, I don't have time to paint. I have to do this. I have this errand. I have this appointment. I have this project. And I never find time in a busy schedule to do something like a daily painting challenge or even every few days. And so during pleinairpril, I have to be extremely disciplined. I have to schedule time in, make time to do the daily painting. And there are some days where that is extremely difficult, whether I have other deadlines or a day full of appointments that I have to drive like 3 hours for. You know, it's not always easy. And I did miss one day. I'll just put that out there, and that's okay. I actually could have painted that day, but I had already, it was the day we came home from the Isle of Skye, and I was so burned out from driving, and my friends were leaving the next day, and it was just like too much, and that's okay. And I think that's maybe a mini lesson you can take from this, that it's okay to not be perfect in a challenge like this or in your practice. But the really important thing is to gain the benefits of the daily painting, or at least frequent painting, is to schedule it in. And I'm not really good at scheduling it in for a specific time of day. I've never been able to maintain a super strict, like every day at 9 a.m. I'm gonna paint. I usually kind of go with the feeling of the day. If I have appointments in the morning, I'll paint in the afternoon. Or if I'm running errands in town, I'll paint on the way to them or on the way home from them, stop the car somewhere I want to paint. So I'm very flexible with that, which I think in a way makes it a little trickier, because I envy people who are super strict with their schedule. It just seems like it would be so much cleaner and more predictable, but my world is just total chaos. And yeah, I've learned to live with that, or maybe I need that, I don't know. A lot of people may not understand, like non-artists or people who don't know you very well, but I pretty much only associate with people who kind of get me. So if I say I have to make time for painting, it's not just like, oh, she's off to do her frivolous little hobby. Like, it's a serious thing, and they take it seriously, so that's good. And if you're struggling with that, you might want to have a conversation with people in your life. Like, if you're trying to seriously get good at something, whether it's art or learning a language or a musical instrument, like, have a talk with them and say, hey, this is really important to me, and I have to schedule time in, otherwise it's never going to happen, and I won't be able to pursue my dream. And if they understand, if they love you and care for you, they will accommodate that. And I also know that, you know, many people have busy family lives, kids schedules, taking care of elderly parents, all of that. And you can't quite explain it to them. You can't quite get the point across. And in that case, it is a matter of self-discipline. So cutting out some TV time or whatever it is to have 10, 15, 20 minutes to sketch. Anyway, what I find is that by the end of the month, I am so much more in the flow, in the groove, and it's a lot easier to say no to things that don't really matter to me, like watching TV or doing something I don't care about, and replacing that with painting time. Whereas before April, I can easily just waste a whole afternoon watching some dumb show or a movie or something, which downtime is important too. But I think, you know, if you have a goal, it's a matter of discipline. Seeing yourself improve in a skill day after day, or maybe it's not so noticeable. You only notice it between like the first day and the last day of the month. That was kind of my case. And that goes into my next lesson, which is you might not always feel productive in your daily painting challenge or schedule. Oh, hello, birdie. You might not always feel like you're making progress or being productive with it. And maybe even some days you feel like you've taken a step backwards. I have often done that. Like there's days where I feel like I paint like crap and I'm like, wow, I am regressing. I am going backwards. And I think that is just a normal part of the ebb and flow. Some days I'm not as focused. I'm trying to paint, I'm trying to get my sketch in, but I'm just not in the flow or in the groove of it. And my work suffers for it. But when I look at the overall progress from day 1 to day 30, I do see improvement. And a lot of times it's not just technical skill, it's my observational skills, it's my color theory or my understanding of color in the environment. That's a huge one, actually. Every single year, doing a daily grind for like 30 days straight, it's challenging, but at the end of it, I feel so much more attuned to the nuances of color in the environment, and that alone is worth it. Even if, again, you don't feel like you've accomplished much in the moment or day by day, those types of things stick with you. And of course, it's also about the brush mileage. Like, we cannot improve without the brush mileage. The amount of time we spend, you know, building our hand-eye coordination, putting pencil or pen to paper, mixing, getting a feel for the consistency of the paint, and practicing what we see, putting what we see to the paper. That is like a million trillion baby steps, and it will take a very, very long time. So I definitely can't maintain a daily schedule for very long. You know, 30 days is a bit much. I've done a 100-day challenge before, and that was just brutal. And I learned so much, and I look back on that with joy. But during the 100 days, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so over this. And it's okay. Like, it's okay to have breaks. And I think it's important to let the lessons you learn sink in, and then take that into a different project, take it into the next steps of your journey. And maybe that sort of relates to the third lesson, which was feeling okay with sharing not so great art every day. I had many days where I was like doing a 10-minute sketch and I was like, this is garbage. I know I learned something from this. I know it is important. And now I have to post it as part of my daily 30-day thing. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want people to think like, oh, wow, what an imposter. Like, she does this crappy sketch. She's not even an artist. You know, like all these bad thoughts go swirling through your mind. And I just did it anyway. And I was like, you know what? It's okay, because I know I can paint something I want to paint in a way I want to paint it. But to get to that point, it takes all of these baby steps. And I think that is a hugely overlooked part of the art process online. When you're scrolling on Instagram, most of the time you're seeing finished results, you're seeing someone posting something after years of practice, many, many years sometimes, and you don't see all of these little tiny failures or crappy sketches that they did day after day to get to that point. I've always tried to show the real process behind the scenes. Like, it's okay to have days that suck and it's okay to have just very minimal sketches. Fill your sketchbook with just junk, whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're practicing and working on. And all of those little steps build up to the good thing. And it builds up to the point where, yeah, okay, I can do a commission. I can paint a thing I want to paint. During a pleinairpril, when I'm painting every day, even if I only have 5 minutes, you can't expect yourself to accomplish some kind of masterpiece. So you have to come to terms with that. And I think in a way that is a huge growing phase for me each year. Like, I get rid of these barriers that I feel between myself and my audience. Like, okay guys, this is me. This is like the real process. This is throwing stuff in my sketchbook, being okay with it. Some of them weren't even finished. Like, it's just part of it. And it's so scary at first, honestly, which is kind of ridiculous. But I think we build up this persona online and we want people to only see the good stuff, and suddenly being very vulnerable or sharing something and people don't know that you think it's crap, but you feel like it's crap. You might get responses and people are like, wow, this one is lovely. I love seeing the process. I love seeing the sketch. And it kind of reminds you like, oh, that is totally okay. Like, everyone goes through this. And I struggle with that so much because I have kind of a teaching presence online. Like, I'm trying to share my experiences and share my process, teaching people what I do. I often get into this mode where I'm like, oh, I can only share my good stuff, because otherwise, you know, if I share anything bad, people will not think I'm a good teacher or something, or won't want to learn from me. And then, you know, there goes half of my business. I know some people are judging what I post, but I have to be okay with it because it is a real part of the learning process. Another lesson I often feel during pleinairpril, the day after day, oftentimes very quick sketches, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, sometimes not even finished, is that I surprise myself. Like, if I'm painting really, really fast, if I know I have 10 minutes, that's pretty fast. That's very fast, actually. It's just like flying through the sketch. And in those moments, it's a very intuitive process. Like, I'm not able to spend ages painstakingly drawing each line. It's not going to be perfectly straight. It's not going to be the exact angle I need, and it's often kind of wonky. And then when it comes to color mixing, it's like pure reactionary, intuitive painting. I'm not able to overthink anything. I can't second guess myself. It's like I paint and I almost like black out during the process. And then I look at it at the end and I'm like, how did I get here? And doing that time after time after time, you obviously are going to grow your skill, but like, you really learn to trust yourself. That is a huge, especially with watercolor. I find that because it's so spontaneous and flowy, and like, I'm oftentimes when I'm painting fast, I'm splashing things around and just letting it flow. And I like I leave things alone. I let things bloom into each other, and I just have to move on. And in the end, I get a result that is much more alive and fresh feeling. And yeah, like, when you do all these little paintings one after another, you kind of realize like, oh, I don't have to control every single little thing, and I still love the result, and I still have learned from it. And like, it's that fresh, exciting feeling you get from plein air. Like, it is so hard to replicate that in the studio when you have all the time in the world and all the supplies in the world and very comfortable. You can, you know, very often I over render things in the studio and make things too tight and just kind of stiff. So that is a huge thing I gain from doing these daily quick sketches. I think that is so valuable. And I feel like each of these could be like alone, each of these lessons alone are worth doing it, but all of them combined, it's even better. The final big lesson I learn each year is that gear doesn't matter. There were so many days where I had a pencil and paper, or just a small watercolor kit, one brush, one piece of paper, and that's it. Like, sometimes I don't have an easel, sometimes I do, but I get so many comments on my videos and Instagram posts, like people in emails actually, of people asking, what is the best kit to start with? And I always want to say, just start with a pencil and paper, and then add one or two colors, a few colors, a mini watercolor kit, one brush, like slowly build up the supplies. And over time, you'll kind of feel out what you need. And in the next video, or the coming video where I talk about my favorite plein air gear, I will explain why I love everything I have and what I use. But I think it's so easy to get distracted by shiny things. Like, you see someone using something online and you're like, oh, if I had that easel or that palette, then I would be good. Then I could do it. And you kind of like build up this scenario in your head where you don't have what it takes to become a good artist already, but you do. And I honestly wish I had started off drawing for way longer than I did before I started painting, like observational skills, I mean. Painting from life is so hard, especially if you don't have solid drawing skills. So like when I first started painting outside, I was just splashing watercolor around. I didn't take enough time to fully practice my drawing skills. So I was kind of doing that simultaneously. And I feel like that was a slower progress. I already had a decent amount of foundational drawing skills, but it wasn't the same. It's not the same as when you go outside and you practice drawing buildings from life and trees and rocks and cars and all these things, and then start to understand values and color theory, and then practicing painting techniques and all of that. So going back to my point, the lesson is starting with a pencil and paper is actually one of the best things you could do for yourself if you're serious about observational painting. I mean, of course you can paint things without kind of understanding how they're structured and being able to draw them well, but that is going to be a lot harder, I think. And just the longer I do this, I started in like 2015-16 with my plein air adventures and painting from life. The longer I do this, the more I just want to take like a year off of painting and just draw, like get really good at drawing, because I now see that's the foundation, that's the skeleton of my paintings. And trying to do it at the same time as learning color theory and getting better at all these other things, it is kind of overwhelming. So that's a huge piece of advice I wish I could just tell everyone. Maybe I'm telling you that now. But the thing is, I get it. Like, I get the fact that going to the art store and seeing all these beautiful colors and palettes, and like then going on Instagram and seeing how many cool setups people have, it's that instant feeling of like, oh my gosh, look what they did. Look at their palette. If I had that palette, I could do that, it's just natural. So I really, I try to think about that when I respond to people. And in my own experience, having a good pochade box, the things that open up, having a nice little palette set up, those things can make the experience a little nicer, but it absolutely isn't necessary. And I've also been learning that with my coastal adventures, like hiking and biking on the coast. I'll take like a tiny little plein air, little watercolor kit and a tiny sketchbook and like one brush. And it just reminds me that like you can use the bare minimum. And sometimes that's even better because it takes away all of the faffing of like setting up and breaking down, and like it's way less expensive. So even though I am going to be sharing a video about all of my favorite gear, I'm going to refer back to this video to like get people thinking about this. I really think that gear should be the last thing you're thinking about. before you start. Like, I know you need to have a base set of things like pencil, paper, watercolor paper, a few tubes of watercolor, a few tubes of gouache. I actually would love to know what you all think about this. If you're a beginner, if you've been doing it for a while, like what is your feeling on how you should start, what gear you should start with? Do you agree with me, or do you think I'm totally crazy? Do you think that it is super important to have a really good kit? It's just something I've thought a lot about during pleinairpril and over the years, really. Ultimately, what it comes down to, the most important thing is having the willingness to fail over and over and over again. The willingness to try it, to fail, to get back up, try again, fail, try again, fail. Because it's not just, I mean, the word fail has like a lot of negative connotations, but I think failing is actually your best method of learning in terms of observational painting. Because you try it, if it doesn't work out, you get a feeling for why it doesn't work out, and you try something new the next time. And along the way, you have overall successes, but a lot of times we have in our head what it should look like, and if we don't get that, it's a failure. Yet, you're still learning, and it's still progress. And it's the willingness to keep trying, and that you can't buy that, and you can't make that suddenly appear by buying new gear. I've done that so many times where I'm like, oh, I bought a new easel, I'm gonna go out and now everything's gonna work out. And wake up, nope. I have the internal insatiable curiosity that drives me in my art, in my practice. I think that is far more important than anything you can buy. I think some people are waiting for permission to start, or permission to do a thing a certain way. Like, oh, am I allowed to mix these colors together? Am I allowed to mix these brands together? Am I allowed to use it in this way? And yes, 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 all of it. You are allowed to do anything you want to do and in any way you want to do it. Art is so freeing in that way. There are rules, of course, when it comes to some things. Like if you're oil painting, you kind of have to work with the paint in a specific way when you're layering it so that it doesn't crack and all of that kind of thing. But like the only rule I can think about with gouache is like not to make it too thick. If you paint really, really, really thick with gouache, it can crumble and crack off the paper. But you learn that pretty quick. As soon as you do one of those paintings and you start seeing it crumble, you know not to do it again. But I mean, besides that, it is completely up to you to do it however you want to do it. I love that. I think that is just so cool. And everyone's going to do it in a different way. I think we sort of all have similar techniques, but our expression and how we see the world is going to be completely different. And I think that's what's exciting about it. So I guess don't wait for permission from anyone. Just start. And doesn't matter what gear you use. What matters is your willingness to do it. I've repeated myself many times now. So we're going to end this video. By the way, during pleinairpril, I finished 2 sketchbooks. My big Stillman and Byrne beige sketchbook, that is now done, and I've already started a new one. I also finished one of my mini Strathmore sketchbooks, but I can't find it, and I'm very upset about that. I've looked in the car, I've looked in all of my bags. I don't know if I left it somewhere, but I'm very sad. I hope I just find it eventually. But those 2 are done, and I have, of course, a few others started. I started painting on these little cardstock pieces. They're just like thick pieces of beige cardstock, craft paper kind of thing. And I love it. It's just kind of fun. It's like a little postcard. Not that I would send that to anyone, but it's just kind of fun to have a collection of those. Anyway, we're not getting into gear now. We'll talk about that in a coming video. I hope you guys gained something from this, or if not, had a good time listening to me ramble on. And I'll see you all very soon for another video. I'm going to be doing some more painting videos soon. Obviously, pleinairpril kind of disrupts the flow a little bit, but it's a good thing. And you know, if the weather stays like this, I'll definitely be out there painting, and I'll take you along with me. So thanks for hanging out with me, everyone, and I'll see you next time.